Stand by for action.
Thanks for joining. My name is Dave Miller. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. The Way Back Commentaries with the Reverend Michael E. Jones, the underground professor, continues with content and study suggestions and other issues surrounding the Way Back.
Now, if I was to pick a book from modernity, it would be something like the Capitalist Manifesto by Gary Wolfram, who's a professor at Hillsdale College. And he talks about how capitalism does work and is an argument, and it's in a concise little paperback book. As a matter of fact, I can reach it, I hope, without everything falling over. Here it is, I'm putting it on Periscope for you to see. And it's kind of like a refutal to the Communist Manifesto, right? But it's understanding the market economy and defending liberty. Now, that's the concepts of things that I look for. It explains the economy, which is one of the things that we really didn't include in any of our lists, is economics. We did politics, we did freedom, we did republic, but we didn't stick economics in there. And now we could have added Adam Smith, but that's a tune that you can use to hold open the door to an Abrams tank. And
so that's where Atlas Shrugged comes in. Yeah.
Yes, Atlas Shrugged does do that. But there's a lot of people have a lot of problems with Ayn Rand and her books. I don't personally, but I think they're great for what they do. But as far as a pure book on defending capitalism, I've seen many that say that's what they're doing. This is the only one that I've seen that actually does it, and it goes through and lists examples. And it's a great little way of introducing the concepts of capitalism and economics and why it works, and refutes those examples that are often used by the left in showing why it doesn't work. When using it, the people like Sanders and those guys. This is a great refutation of it. And face it, if the country falls, then capitalism's over, and we'll be slaves, and we'll be in a slave economy again, not a capitalist economy.
Right. Yeah. It'll be a collective state of some sort, certainly.
Right. A theocracy.
And what the one honestly, I can't think of a lot of books written in modernity that go along with what you're talking about. And honestly, I think you are correct that we won't need books and at that future time that throw tomatoes at the government, because there are already going to be tomatoes being thrown at the government, rotten tomatoes. We'll need books that actually offer solutions, and not just that talk about old problems, stuff that happened as far as those people are going to be concerned in their great grandfathers' times. What I was thinking of, as far as a modern book goes, would be something like The Road to Serfdom. That's by F.A. Hayek.
Yes, that's another one I was going to mention too. So yeah, anything Hayek wrote, or Thomas Sowell or Walter E. Williams.
Right. Books that as you say, Prof, books that offer frameworks in good arguments as to why, for instance, capitalism is the best economic system for the people, as opposed to collective systems, which always seem to support a well-moneyed ruling class on the backs of a very large working class. Books of that nature that are actually of some use. So I see what you're saying when you don't. When you're talking about not putting in books by Limbaugh and Beck and people like that. And people might do that just because they happen to be fans of theirs. I personally don't think that would be of any use, and personally, but I hesitate to tell people not to include things, or if they do include them, I would say that they might want to put in a preface of their own, tuck a piece of paper in there or something like that says something along the lines of, all right, this book was written by Ann Coulter in the year, let's say 2010, and it regards the political situation in the United States of America and the world as of that year. And that way people will know that it was something that was written relevant to that time and to that time only. Again, this is something that the future founders are they might glance at it, but I think they're going to get a lot more use out of, for instance, the book that you talked about, the civics book that you referred to. They're going to get a lot more use out of that, and they're going to get a lot more use out of the anti-federalist papers. That's just my opinion. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's actually no book I would ban, but
right.
There are books that I would put. You got to create triage here. You got to decide what's worth having. What's worth spending our time and money on, and anybody could pick anything and do that, and I wouldn't say that's wrong, but because everything we had that we can add to culture and to society and information is worth it. But we're looking at the angle from this show as an angle of how to reconstruct a society and recreate civil society with capitalist and Republican ideals. And so that's the angle that I looked at on what would I include, what would I have, because there are fantastic books. The Constitutional Reader from Hillsdale's one, but there's all these great books like Friends of Liberty by Nash and Hodges would be great. All the James Bond books would be great. But
well,
but
what
there
about
are things that lead and help and things that would be nice, but after civil society's picked up.
Well, yes. One that I'm thinking of. What about the minutes to the Constitutional Convention?
Yes. Didn't we say that? I thought we did say that. Because the debates on the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, Anti-Federalist Papers, you have to have all of those.
Yes, I did put in the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers, but not the actual minutes as recorded during the debates. I think that would be very helpful. That would be something else to throw in. So yes, and you bring up a great point. I say be individualistic in your choices, but also realize that it's a lot easier to hide something that's more or less a few feet square than it is to hide something that's the size of a room. If it comes to a point where you have to hide something. So that's why your selection of materials might have to be rather small because that's easier to conceal. And as I said, future governments that are going to be very totalitarian, it's going to be a lot easier for them to find a book collection that's the size of a refrigerator than it is to find one that's the size of say a bread maker. So,
yeah, if they get to my house, the book burning will probably be able to be seen from the moon.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like I've got over 5,000 books here.
Well, they'd have to bring the salamander to your place. That's, by the way, for people who aren't familiar what that is, that's the fire engine, the literally fire engine from Fahrenheit 451.
Right.
Yeah,
that blows off the fire and the hose.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. That I think it was like fueled by kerosene. And yeah, it's a big fire truck, and everybody rides on the thing and all that, But then they get off and pull out the hose and everything, and just blast all the books in the house, and then blast the house. So
for good measure.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, can't have a house around where there've been all these nasty books with these unapproved ideas inside. Come on. But yeah, I mean the the choices are going to have to be individual, but I think we both offered some good choices, and it's something that people can do moving forward if they I like to tell people you're never powerless. There is something that you can do, and if nothing else, you can do this. And I mean, there are going to be plenty of people who are going to be involved in the more kinetic versions of revolution in the coming generations. That's going to happen as well. But I would say that in his way, Thomas Paine was every bit as important as George Washington.
Yeah, they all had their roles. You remember I did a few shows where I called it the Indispensable Man series, and I pointed out that, Franklin was the indispensable man, Washington was the indispensable man. And without any of them, I don't think we'd have become a country, because it took what they did to push the country. Paine, if it wasn't for common sense, then Washington's army would have been so demoralized. Who knows? We might not have had the victories that came after that. And so there's all these different people had all these different roles, and I think if you take any one of them away, then we might not be standing here today free, or whatever we are standing here today as.
Well, I think you're right. And I think that anybody listening to this might be thinking, well, okay, I'm just a homemaker. I'm just a 40-year-old homemaker that, yeah, sure, I graduated high school, but I can't go out and give speeches, and I don't have a lot of money to go out to rallies, or I don't have it. I just don't have it in me to run for office and be successful. So I don't feel that there's anything that I can do. And the fact is, yes, you can. There are things that you can do that if will not bear fruit today, they could bear fruit in a time yet to come. And I think that's important, because another thing that we'll have to do in the years ahead is we'll have to keep our spirits up, and that's going to include bringing everyone in on the revolution, just as all of us are part of the militia of the United States of America, and that's why we have the Second Amendment. You could say that all of the people will be the Minutemen of the new revolution, even if all they do in their lifetimes is gather together the materials and teach what they can, and then pass those on. After they're gone, it'll be their kids' turn and their kids' turn after that. There are, there are probably at this point billions of people throughout history that we'll never know. Each of them in their day did what they could to move people towards personal liberty. They knew what the goal was, and they knew they'd never see it in their lifetimes. But in their day, they did their little bit, whatever it was, to move us to the point where we started the American Republic. We'll never know those people, but I'm eternally grateful to them, all of them, for what they did, and I'm perfectly content at this stage to die and be forgotten, as long as some people use the idea that I've thrown out there and pass it on and do something and maybe relieve some suffering for a generation or two of people in the future. You may not be recognized. Your name may not be in the history books. In fact, it probably won't. But you'll know it, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think of that?
Now, you think about that. Of all the people that have died, how many people are still remembered by most people? Outside of a handful of presidents and serial killers, not very many. But their concepts, their ideas, their fights lived on. And what you described would have described most of this country for most of their lives. They spent teaching the value of freedom and liberty and the limited government. And it is only, there's one less fly in this world. Call PETA. Oh, man. Sorry.
Wait a minute, now that might be Kelly's
I left the back door open,
okay.
And I got like 5 flies in here now coming from the back door. But you're right. Now, it wasn't until the welfare state was created that paradigm shifted, and that now we have 40-50%. Somewhere I saw a statistic that 53% of the country still works, and the rest are on welfare. So, there's a little over half of us are still promoting liberty and freedom, and the other half are promoting, cradle to grave government comfort. And I'd imagine that there's not even half of those people still promoting freedom. There's probably a lot of them that are willing to give up any time now because they're just tired of feeding and funding dependents off of their paycheck that they have never met or heard of, and which is exactly what we're doing. But yes, for the future, you never know. I think back on those shows I've done where I've said something and then I've gotten a message back. One in particular that still chills me. I talked about when I was severely crippled, and I go after things like doctor-assisted suicide. And I was actually in a position where I considered that. And then I considered my own suicide, forget the doctor. And I discussed with the audience what I had gone through with that. And, it was a completely vulnerable thing to do and say, and I don't even know why I did it, but I felt compelled to do it, so I did. And then I got an email back that there was somebody on her bed and she turned on the computer for background noise on Blog Talk and randomly selected a show, and it was mine. She'd never heard it, and she heard my show, and it saved her life. And so you don't know who's hearing you when you teach or talk sometimes, like you're doing it over the radio. But your message may not even affect those that are your primary audience, people that are listening to you, but they might go out and say something and it affects somebody that makes a difference. And so, just because you don't think you're being effective or that the world will know who you are in the future is a reason not to push this or to do it or, to protect your freedom now.
Right. You do it because it's right. It's just like I don't know. You've used this example yourself. It's just like a cashier gives you too much change. Well, you can just walk off, but you don't. You go back in and you go, hey, you gave me $1 too much here. Does it change the world? No, it doesn't. But you did it because it's the right thing to do.
It's funny you bring up that example, Ag. Because I've had a lot of people tell me that story has made them feel guilty, and when they go out and do stuff, and they're like, "Oh crap, the professor told that story." And, I think that's funny.
Oh yeah, well yeah. It's what people and this is a problem I think with our culture, and who knows, this could even be intentional on the part of the Fabian socialists. That somehow every person deserves to have their name up in lights. They deserve to be recognized nationally and internationally for what they do, and they deserve to be remembered until the end of time. And it's usually for nothing, and that's why you have people. That's why you get kids on YouTube spraying themselves in the face with bear mace. Which, if you've never watched any of those videos, that's just funny as anything. But what young people aren't being taught today is that recognition only has to come from within and from God. And if you know it, then God knows it, and you're cool. You don't have to have recognition from your peers, your friends, your family. Almost nobody in my family listens to my show. You don't have to have any of that as long as you know that you've done it and you've done what you've done for good reasons, because it's the right thing to do. This is a message that isn't being given enough to young people. In fact, the opposite message is being given to them. And that if you talk to some of these psychologists out there about some of the mass shooters, they say, well, that's the reason that they go out and do this, because they know they're going to get like maybe a day's coverage on the national news. Never mind the other implications. They're going to be famous and they're going to be recognized and people are going to know their names. Now, of course, that has pervaded our culture so much now that people do these horrible things, and 2 weeks later we forget who they were. So it's beginning to have an opposite effect. But if you can teach the young that their own deeds, their own works, if recognized by themselves, are going to be enough, then you'll have people that are prepared to do the right thing just because it's right, not necessarily because they're going to get any kind of recognition. I mean, God, you and Ken blow me away in ratings, but I still do my stupid little show because I know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I only have tens of listeners.
Well, you got more than you think.
Yeah, I'm with you also on family. My parents look at me like I've grown a third eye when I ask if they've heard my show. None of my family, I think, listens to me anymore. Every now and then God's Girl does, and once in a blue moon, my oldest daughter tunes in to hear. But the problem is with family is they're too close to you. They think they already know everything you're going to say, and that you're crazy. So why bother wasting the time listening? And same with coworkers and things. They think they know you. But that's the way that is. That's the way that is. Now, go ahead.
No. Go on.
Oh, I was going to say, but the important thing is what we're doing now is encapsulated digitally. And so our shows are being captured, they're being preserved electronically. And so as long as we have, internet and Wi-Fi's and computer systems and, as long as the world doesn't end with EMP strikes, then those things should be around and accessible. But what we're talking about is if something like that does happen, if the Muslims decide that Muhammad didn't have electricity, so no one will, and they turn it all off, then where will you get this information? And this is what started our conversation about this, and where you go, and this is why we've been doing this series. I think, anyway.
That is it in part. Certainly we can use the internet for as long as we're able, and then I know that I save my shows to CD, to DVD once in a while, and just to make sure that they're preserved in that way. And I think other people who host their own podcasts should do the same thing. If nothing else, the DVD can be copied and shared out. But what the series does, what the Way Back does, whether it's in a series or you listen to the whole bloody thing, the whole 34 minutes of it, is it points out that if the internet is somehow shut off to people like us, that isn't the end of the story, and it doesn't have to be the end of the story. We can continue on with other ways, other means, other methods, and the message can be brought forth, and it will be. But, of course, for now, while we have this resource, we'll use it as much as possible and clue in as many people as we possibly can to how to do these things, because it's important to do that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm trying to create underground professors and professorettes.
Well, there you go.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not trying to create unpleasant blind guys, because my blindness is hereditary, so I decided on not doing that myself. But certainly, if I can, I want to create people who question everything, including me.
Exactly.
I want to create critical thinkers, because our society is certainly not doing that. Our society is creating people who think the way that society tells them to, and if they deviate from that, then they're called haters or racist or Islamophobes or whatever new buzzword that the political elites can have their social scientists come up with to make a person feel bad that they're actually questioning the government or the media or anything else.
Yes. The way back, I think, is absolutely well named, and it's sad because you would think, Agador, we see the writing on the wall, we see what's coming, and it would seem to me so much easier to save it than to have to rebuild it and recreate it. But
yes.
It really doesn't turn out that way, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I'll tell you something. I'll give you the genesis of the title of it.
That's it for this time. Next time, the Way Back Commentaries for 2015 concludes with final thoughts from myself and the Underground Professor.
Agador and the Underground Professor, both sitting high atop a double rainbow, gaily swinging our feet over the Hermitage of North Texas's liberal conservative studies. This has been copyrighted in the year of your Lord 2015, via Concarne for the Agadorable fans and via Contoodles for mine.
I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2015, Anno Domini.